For your patience, everyone, we're now streaming live.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us this evening to discuss potential changes to the DASH network for fiscal year 2022. My name is Whitney Code, and I'm the Marketing and Communications Manager at DASH. And tonight we'll be discussing and seeking feedback on major route and service changes as part of the new DASH network. This new network represents a complete redesign of Alexandria's bus network intended to meet current and future transit ridership demand, and to encourage more people to use transit for more trips at more times of day. We look forward to answering any questions you may have and listening to any feedback you may want to share. This evening's meeting will be recorded and available on our website at dashbus.com/new network. Before we begin, two of our awesome board members are here this evening, Stephen Kleist and Lawrence Chambers, and I'd like to give them an opportunity to welcome you all. Steve, we'll start with you, and then if you would hand it over to Larry.
Sure, thank you, Whitney. I'd like to thank everyone for participating in the event this evening. This is a very important initiative for DASH. Again, as Whitney said, my name is Steve Kleist, and I have served on the board of directors with DASH. I have had a seat on the board since 2013. I also currently serve as the vice chairman for the board. And again, this is important to DASH in that we need to understand where our ridership base currently is in place, how we need to service our customers, and how to deliver the best possible service with the resources that we have. 2 weeks ago, DASH experienced an anniversary. 37 years ago, 2 weeks ago, on March 11th of 1984, DASH started operation with 30 employees and 17 buses. And we have certainly grown considerably since that time. We now operate, in addition to the standard type of bus that everyone is used to, but we're also operating electric buses and articulated buses in an effort to meet both our environmental needs and to best service our customers. But changes have been made in routes on an incremental basis, but that goes back in time. And what Martin Barna is going to go through today is to collect your feedback and how we can reshape the service delivery to our customers to best serve them and to provide the riders with the best possible choices to get to the destinations that meet their needs. We really want to have your input, and it's important for us to get that so we can configure our system so it best suits the needs of our customers based on today's environment. But again, thank you very much for participating in this evening's event, and I'd like to turn it over to Larry.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you all for joining us tonight. It really is so important, for our neighbors here in Central Alexandria to attend sessions like this and to share your voice. When I think about the reason that I'm a DASH rider and the pre-COVID and hopefully very soon post-COVID times. It gets me to work. My family, I've got a large family. I've got 4 kids. I live in the Clover College Park neighborhood. We have one car. It helps me feel like I'm leaving less of an environmental footprint. It gets me to work on time. And I also think about just how much challenges we face here in Central Alexandria around congestion. Riding the bus is one way to minimize congestion. But thank you for being here. Again, as Steve said, your feedback is important in how this network ends up looking. So really looking forward to hearing what you have to say tonight. And with that, I'll turn it over to Whitney. Thanks.
Thank you both. Thanks, Martin. If you have any additional feedback or would like more detailed information, please visit dashbus.com/new network. For anyone who would like to view information about the fiscal year 2022 proposed changes in Spanish or Amharic, I encourage you to visit dashbus.com/new network Spanish or dashbus.com/new network Amharic. Now, There are a few poll questions that I would like to pose to our attendees before we begin. On your screen, you should soon be seeing poll question number 1. There it is. Poll question number 1. Are you a resident of the city of Alexandria? If you would, please select yes or no, and then click submit. We'll give you all just a moment to select your answers, and then we'll move on to the next poll question.
A few more seconds for anyone who wants to answer before we close.
Thanks, Caitlin. All right, let's move on to poll question number 2. How often have you used Dash in the last month? Multiple times per week, about once per week, about once per month. I haven't used Dash in the last month, or I don't use Dash but often ride Metro bus or Metro rail. We'll give you just a few moments to make those selections as well and click submit.
Okay, we have about half of attendees responding. We'll give it a few more seconds for anyone to finish up their answer.
Perfect, thanks, Caitlin. And one more poll question, and then we'll hop into the presentation. We will have some additional poll questions further into the meeting. Poll question 3, how did you hear about this meeting? Email update, the Dash website, social media, flyer posted at a bus stop, word of mouth, or other. And if you select other, I would encourage you to please, in the Q&A section in the middle of your page, please tell us what that other is.
We have most respondents. We'll give it a few more seconds and then move on.
Okay, thank you, Caitlin. All right, as we move through tonight's information, I encourage all of our attendees to submit your questions and comments by clicking on the Q&A button on your screen. Type your question, and at the conclusion of tonight's presentation, we will read and respond to your inquiries. This will help us ensure that we're documenting all of your feedback to share with our full board of directors. And now I'm going to turn over the meeting to Dash's Director of Planning and Marketing, Martin Barna.
All right, thank you very much, Whitney. And thank you, board members, Kleist and Chambers as well, for your welcome and introductory comments. You can see here on the screen that we've got a presentation lined up for you this evening that will provide some information about some of the service proposals that Dash is planning to undertake in the upcoming fiscal year. So I've got it's probably going to be a 20 to 25 minute presentation to make sure that I provide you with all the information I can with a focus on Central Alexandria. And then at the end of that presentation, we will open up for Q&A and any comments or discussion that you all would like to submit. And we're happy to take any questions. We'd like hopefully to focus on Central Alexandria for at least the first part of the Q&A, so that anyone who's focused on that will be able to hear the information. But then of course we're happy to answer questions about any part of the city, as part of the later part of the Q&A. And really just to reemphasize the point that's already been made, we're here to listen tonight. We want to hear from you about what your thoughts are, what's your reactions, if you have questions about how this is going to affect you and your community. This is a good forum to ask those questions. So we strongly encourage participation both in the polls that will be going on and also at the Q&A. So that being said, I will go ahead and jump into the presentation. The first item that I wanted to just mention is the Alexandria Transit Vision Plan. Hopefully some of you have heard about this project. It's a project that started a couple years back in 2018. It's a 2-year project, but the ultimate outcome of the project was a newly redesigned bus network. The long-term vision for the new network was for 2030. but we also had a 2022 network as well that really was meant to identify what the bus network could and should be, aspirationally for those years. So kind of thinking about it in the big picture, the ATV is sort of the guide map for what that will kind of guide a lot of our service planning decisions over the next decade. So this, the proposal that we're talking about tonight for FY22 are sort of the first step in that journey of the ATV. As I mentioned, it's a 2-year project that spanned most of 2018 and 2019. The final plans were adopted by the Dash Board of Directors at the end of 2019. And now we are moving forward in the implementation phase. So you see here on your screen, just there was a lot going on with the ATV in terms of all the outreach we did and all the different concepts and proposed networks that we had. But really the 4 things to really know about the ATV are listed here. Perhaps the most important is that it seeks to increase ridership by making transit more useful to more people at more times of day. And what we mean by that is I can kind of break that down a little bit. We want it to be more useful, and we consider useful to be frequent enough that you don't necessarily have to check a timetable. You can kind of walk up to the stop and know that there's going to be a bus coming along shortly. So you don't have to kind of schedule your life around when the bus is coming or isn't coming. And then also more people, put in areas where there's more dense areas where a lot of people want to go, at major activity centers, things like that. And then at more times, traditional transit network and Dash's current network is skewed fairly heavily towards peak riders that kind of are using transit for their 9 to 5 commute. And one of the major changes that we'll see with the ATV is that we'll have a lot more service during middays, evenings, and weekends, which will help non-traditional commuters that actually make up half or more than half of our ridership today. So that's sort of a disproportionate sort of imbalance in terms of our service focus that we're trying to remedy. So hopefully much better service on weekends, evenings, and middays. The other points that I have here, just we focused on not just existing demand, but also future demand. Where the most growth is occurring, where people want to go today, but also where they want to go in the future. We've got lots of major new developments that are coming online in the next decade. I think population and jobs are expected to grow by 20% or thereabouts in Alexandria between now and 2030. So major growth is afoot. And then lastly, also there's a new metro rail station. For those that aren't familiar, the Potomac Yard Metro is opening next year. So making sure that we have adequate bus service to support that. Last 2 points, the ATV is designed to provide major increases in access, frequent all-day service to low-income and minority residents. And then lastly, it also is designed to cover the majority of existing Dash riders. So if you were to map out all the ridership, where all the boardings occur stop by stop in the Dash system today, or actually pre-COVID, I should say, 99.5% of those boardings would be within an 1/8 mile of a new bus stop in our new proposed network. So again, the ATV is kind of the large long-term vision that what we're shooting towards. For the immediate future, we are talking about FY22, which starts July 1st. We are planning to launch the first phase of the ATV, which is the new Dash network. And that launches in September. September 5th is our targeted launch date. So we're talking about less than 6 months from now, where we would start to see actual service and route changes. As I mentioned, this is the first phase of the ATV. This is, I want to clarify, we have a 2022 ATV plan, which is what we had hoped to implement for 2022, but due to budget constraints and other factors, we are having to implement a reduced version of that 2022 network. So it's not quite all the service that we wanted to add for the 2022 ATV plan, but it is a good bit, it is a significant improvement. It includes a lot of the benefits of that whole plan. It just doesn't have all the service on all the routes that we had hoped. We're hoping to have the full 2022 plan in place for FY23, which is the next fiscal year. And I should note that we are very fortunate that we're able to implement this, considering all the economic challenges that the city has faced due to the COVID pandemic. So we're very fortunate that we haven't had to make cuts, and we're able to do this year. So again, it's a modern bus network that provides frequent all-day bus service to a lot of people, and it improves overall mobility. You've got the website there, which Whitney mentioned. And then also at the bottom, I do mention that we do have a number of metro bus routes that run through the city of Alexandria, several of which are proposed to change in conjunction with this new Dash network in the fall. So, we have, there's information on the WMATA website about those proposals. I'll talk about a couple of them tonight just because they're directly relevant to Central Alexandria. But I just want to note that there's more information on the WMATA website. And though we have a great partnership with WMATA, and I'm happy to answer questions as best I can, I can't really speak on their behalf. So if you have comments or questions for WMATA, I suggest that you visit the website and provide feedback directly to them. So a couple more detailed notes about the new network. One of the things that existing riders will notice right off the bat is that the route numbers are all going to be different. And this is a big change, not one that we took lightly, but we felt that this was something that we could do to make it a little more customer friendly, a little simpler and easier to understand. You can see that the new lines will be lines 30 through 36. That'll be a kind of our core network that if you see a bus that's numbered 30 through 36, you'll know that bus is going to be running all day, 7 days a week. So that's kind of the core network. Then there's also be lines 102 through 104. Those are weekday only or peak only routes. So slightly different service. So you can look at a map and kind of understand what the service level is for a given route based on the route. And then also we had some complaints about the AT prefix, AT3, AT4. For those that those with disabilities or non-native English speakers, sometimes the AT sounds like 80. So we wanted to try to avoid that confusion for those that aren't familiar with the network. So the route numbers are not the only thing that's changing. The entire network is changing. There are 4 routes that are staying the same routing. They're staying the same in terms of the alignment. They just have a new name, and those are listed there: the 2X, the 8, the 10, and the trolley. So same alignment, just different name for those. All other routes in the system have at least some variation to their routing. So a lot of people are going to be experiencing new routings. Potentially they'll have to travel along different corridors than they're used to today. So there's going to be a massive communication effort, which starts with meetings like tonight. So we really want to be able to answer all the questions and make sure folks understand what the impact is going to be. So the website is a great place to start for that, but also if you have questions, happy to take those at the end. The frequent network is a huge part of the new Dash network that we're trying to launch in the fall. As I mentioned, we're trying to provide transit that's more useful. And we believe that useful transit is transit that arrives every 15 minutes or better all day, 7 days a week. So again, if you're going out to the bus stop, at noon on a Tuesday or 7 p.m. on a Sunday, you can walk out there and there's going to be a bus that's coming along fairly shortly. So that frequent network made up of routes that run every 15 minutes all day, 7 days a week. You're going to hear me talk a lot about that in the next couple of slides. And again, that's 7 days a week. So you have better mobility during middays, evenings, and weekends because of that. So here's the actual map of the proposed FY22 new Dash network. This is it's a smaller map. I know it's hard to see on the screen probably, so I won't spend too much time on this slide. But I did just want to pause here for a second and make the note that when we look at maps, transit maps in particular, we often focus on the lines and specifically where the lines are going, and that's important certainly to how useful it'll be. But as I've said, the frequency with which the routes operate and the span as well are often even more important in terms of how useful the routes will be. If you see lines that are on a map but it only runs during peaks or only runs once an hour, it's limited in its usefulness. So when we're able to have more frequent service and show that on maps, which we are doing here in color, then that's very useful, we believe. So to that end, what you'll see in these maps are that the red routes are the frequent all-day network that I was just talking about, where all the routes shown in red, you have service coming every 15 minutes or better all day, 7 days a week. So that's really the threshold that we're talking about in terms of useful transit service, where it becomes exponentially more useful for the average person, and you would expect to see significantly more ridership because of that. So that's the red routes that you can see stretch across the city. You've got them in Old Town, King Street corridor, all the way out to West Alexandria, the Beauregard corridor on 35, and then the crosstown route 36, which goes from Mark Center all the way to Potomac Yard via Shirlington, Arlandria, and other places. So that's the frequent network. You also see other routes here. The blue routes are routes mostly that run 7 days a week with one exception, but they run at a less frequent rate than the frequent network. So they're probably running every 30 minutes, maybe every 60 minutes on the weekends. And then the green routes are the routes that are peak only. So those are the ones that are just running rush hour in the morning and evenings on weekdays, typically commuter routes. And then there's some gray routes on here as well. I don't want to forget those. Those are WMATA routes. Those are Metro bus routes. So the frequency is not shown here, but I can talk to that a little bit as I go through. Okay, so I have a series of maps here that I'm going to go through pretty quickly, but I just wanted to provide some background in terms of how well this new network will serve different parts of the community. So these are demographic maps. They're meant to show certain statistics. This one shows population density. So if you're looking at the map, and I apologize, we don't have better labels on this, but hopefully you can see Old Town is down in this corner, the Potomac River. You've got Potomac Yard up here. You've got 395 coming through here, Andor Metro, Duke Street, Quaker, etc. So you can see that the density, the darker colors are the denser areas. So you've got places like Southern Towers and Skyline, down in South Van Dorn, and then parts of Old Town North with denser areas. So as I mentioned, the red lines show the frequent all-day network, that kind of really useful service. So with the new network, you can see that it really does a good job of lining up with those dense areas. So you're putting useful transit service in areas where a lot of people can use it. So that's showing that. This is the same population density map, but with the entire network overlaid. So you can see, pretty well aligned, even more so when you include the non-frequent and peak-only routes. Next shows the residents in poverty. So these are the percentage of people who are living underneath the federal poverty threshold in terms of median household income. So you can see the western part of Alexandria has a lot more density of low-income individuals, down near Van Dorn as well. You've got some in Old Town North, and then a pretty high percentage in Alexandria as well. So, given the fact that many of these people, tend to rely disproportionately on transit, and they've also, with COVID, they've been disproportionately affected by COVID and the resulting recession. So making sure that we provide really good, useful service to them, I think will benefit the community as a whole, but them in particular. You can see, again, really good coverage of frequent service, and then, with the full network as well. And the last of these demographic slides I'll show you is minority residents. So you can see the darker shades of pink are where we have higher percentages of minority residents. And then you can see that, again, the network does a pretty good job of lining up with those areas as well, with providing frequent useful service to those areas. And then there's the full network. So my last slide before we'll take a little break for a few more poll questions, but just to summarize the benefits of the new Dash network, it really does a good job of introducing that frequent all-day network, which spreads across most of the entire city. You see major increases in access for frequent all-day bus service. So this table, let me sort of pause for a second and explain this. So this is showing the percent of residents who are within a quarter mile of a bus stop that is served by frequent all-day service. So those red routes, basically. So if you were to look at an existing Dash map, there's really not too many red routes. There's really only one in Old Town. So based on today's standards or today's network, 27% of all residents, which is about 40,000 people, have access to that frequent all-day network. But then when you get to FY22 with this new Dash network, we're going all the way up to 66%. So 2/3 of city residents will be within a quarter mile of a frequent all-day bus stop. I think that's about 100,000 people. So you're talking about over 50,000 additional people with access to that. And then, of course, when you get to 2030 ATV plan, it gets even higher than that. So that's what we're building towards. But in this first step, we're getting a good bit of the way. So then you break it down further by low income, minority, and seniors. You can see that you're going from almost 30% of low income residents within a quarter mile of those bus stops with frequent all-day service to now 73%. Similar increases with minority and senior residents. And then even jobs. So obviously you want to have the ability to get to and from work using transit. So 40% of jobs in Alexandria are currently within a quarter mile of frequent all-day service. It's going to be 66% with this change in the fall, and then 81% by 2030 with the ATV plan. So as I mentioned, it maintains coverage and maintains service for 99.5% of existing bus boardings. And this last bullet perhaps is one of the most important. The benefits of this network, we think that it's going to be very transformational for people that use the network. But I want to stress that the benefits are also will be conveyed to the entire community, even those that don't ride transit. The benefits of transit and why it's such an important part of any successful city, the congestion mitigation, the environmental, reduced environmental impact, the economic benefits, those things aren't realized just by the buses running. they are realized proportionally to the amount of people that are riding the buses. So the more people that we get to ride buses, the more we see the benefits of transit. And I think that's a really important thing for Alexandria, a city that's growing and facing some of these challenges as we move forward. So I'm going to pause there and toss it back to Whitney for a few more poll questions.
Thank you, Martin. Caitlin, if you would please pull the next poll question for us. Thank you. Which neighborhood or neighborhoods are you most interested in learning about tonight? You can select multiple areas. We have Seminary Hill, that's Seminary and Janie's, Duke Street west of Old Town, King Street west of Old Town, Eisenhower west of Old Town, Park Fairfax and Northridge, West Alexandria, the Arlandria, Del Rey, and Potomac Yard area, or Old Town. And Caitlin, if you would please share those results with us as they come in.
Right now, we have about 70% of attendees have responded. Pretty even mix for Seminary Hill, Duke Street, Park Fairfax, and Arlandria. I'm going to end polling now.
Yes, let's pull the next one. Thank you. Next question is, what current Dash bus route or routes do you use most often? You are welcome to select more than one option. And if you do not ride Dash, feel free to just not select any option on this particular poll question.
About half of our attendees have responded so far. We have quite a few for the AT2 and 2X, as well as the AT8, the 3, the 4, the 34 Loop, and the AT10.
Thank you very much. That concludes this section of poll questions as well, and I'll turn it back over to Martin.
All right, sounds like we got a pretty good mix. It's good to hear. So I will kind of just go through, I'm going to be spending the next few minutes talking specifically about Central Alexandria, kind of going through the different routes that serve parts of Central Alexandria. I will do my best to try and explain the existing service and the differences with the new service, but it does get kind of detailed. So I may kind of gloss over a few things. Please feel free to add a question to the Q&A, and I'll dive down deeper in that part of the meeting. But overall, I would say that I think the new Dash network, which we're planning to launch in September, will have overall an improvement for Central Alexandria, especially along the King Street corridor, and it will be able to maintain service along the Duke Street, Eisenhower, and Seminary Janie's corridors. We're hoping to make improvements on a few of those routes later down the road, but for FY22, we're just able to maintain services based on the budget that we have. So there we go. This is a kind of a little bit of a zoomed in version of the first map that I showed you, and I'll be kind of pulling up some route specific maps after this, but just to kind of get you the lay of the land. So again, I mentioned before that we've got the 31, it's kind of the King Street workhorse route that will be running every 15 minutes, every 10 minutes during peaks, every 15 midday and 15 on weekends. So that's really a workhorse route that kind of does a great job of taking people from West Alexandria into Old Town. That goes all the way into Old Town, goes to King Street Metro, and then all the way into Old Town and then around to Braddock Road. So really important connecting route there. I mentioned the 36AB earlier. And actually, I'm gonna just go ahead and get these. So yeah, so there's the 31. It is similar to the existing AT6. The AT6 goes from MVCC just to the King Street. So it runs along the same alignment basically, but well, with a small deviation, the AT6 goes down Braddock and Hampton. Then it continues into Old Town all the way around Braddock Road. And I should note that the 31 is part of a 2-route combination in Old Town that forms the Old Town Circular, the OTC you see here. The line 30 along Duke Street is the other one that I'll mention in a second. But when those two routes come together, they're offset at King Street so that one arrives, every 15 minutes and it alternates, or actually every 7.5 minutes. And it alternates so that together they have a combined headways along this Old Town circulator routing in Old Town. So you have really high frequency service in Old Town, and that's really useful for a compact urban environment where you can walk there. So that's line 31. Shifting to line 36A and B. So this is similar to the existing AT9. AT9 has the exact alignment as the 36A until it gets to Bradley. The AT9 actually continues out King Street and then ends up going to NVCC before it gets to Mark Center. So there's a slight difference there. But other than that, the 36A is the same as the AT9. This route, the combined headway for this 36A and B is every 15 minutes all day, 7 days a week, which is an improvement over the AT9, which only runs every 20 peak and every 30 off peak. So that's a major improvement there. You'll note that it's a little bit unusual. It has the 36A and 36B. These are technically two different routes that are combined together. They will split in a couple areas to provide some additional coverage to areas like North Van Dorn Street and Park Place, and then in Park Fairfax to places like Valley and Gunston Road. So in those branches, it's only running every 30 minutes, 7 days a week, but on the trunks, it's every 15. And that provides a really good crosstown connection to Shirlington and all the connections you can make there. And then more importantly, next year to the Potomac Yard Metro rail station, which will be open. So it's going to be a really important feeder route to that new metro station. Continuing to move south, this is the Seminary Janie's corridor, which is currently served by the AT2 and the AT2X. Those services are being replaced by the 102 and the 102X. The 2X is exactly the same as what we have today, except it's just a different name. So instead of 102X, instead of AT2X, it's 102X. It's a nonstop service that goes from Mark Center to King Street Metro. This is something that's paid for by the Department of Defense as kind of a shuttle for their employees, but it's open to the public. So that's going to stay the same. How the 102 is going to be the new route that runs along Seminary and Janie's. It replaces a segment of the AT2. I want to make an important distinction that the AT2 continues on into West Alexandria and the Beauregard Street corridor, and the AT2 continues into Old Town around Braddock Road. The 102 only operates between Mark Center and King Street, and it only operates on weekdays. So two important things there. The headways will be every 30 minutes during peak periods and then every 60 during middays. So that's the service that we were providing along this corridor. While I'm actually, hold on from that. Line 30 is the new AT8. It's the exact same alignment, exact same service levels. Operates from Van Dorn and Landmark in the West End, and takes the Duke Street corridor into Old Town. And this is the second part of that Old Town circulator route that I mentioned that kind of combines with the line 30 to get increased frequency along King Street and Old Town. So the Duke Street AT8 is staying the same, just has a new name, line 30. And line 32 is very similar to the existing AT7. For anyone who rides the AT7, it follows the exact same alignment as the AT7 from Landmark all the way to King Street Metro via the Eisenhower Valley corridor. The big difference is that instead of continuing into Old Town, it actually will be stopping at King Street Metro, and you'll be able to make a connection to the Old Town circulator route that I mentioned. And we are planning to make some additional improvements on this corridor. The service levels are basically the same as they are today for the AT7, but we hope in FY23 and FY24 to add some additional service on this corridor, since there's, as many folks know, there's a whole lot of development that's been going in Carlisle near the Eisenhower Metro. So we're really trying to add more service there to meet the transit needs there. You'll notice a dotted line here. That's a potential future alignment that we may be looking at by FY24, but I will not go into too much detail on that one unless people are interested. 25, so now I'm talking about a couple WMATA routes, Metro bus routes. This information is available on the WMATA website, WMATA.com. So the first change is the 25B. This route, it currently runs all the way down to Van Dorn Street, from Boston to Van Dorn Street Metro. Their proposal is that it would stop at Southern Towers and turn back. So the black dotted line that you see here would no longer be served by a 25B. Most of the segments would be picked up by other routes, but I do want to note that there is a section of Taney that would not be served, would not have service because of this proposal. And so they would, anyone who's affected by that would have to walk to Van Dorn or to Jordan. So there's that. And then, so part of the alignment is picked up by the 28A. You can see the black line shows the current 28A routing. This is a route that runs every 20 minutes, 7 days a week. It runs all the way out to Tyson's Corner along the Route 7 corridor. So you got Bailey's Crossroads, Falls Church, and other 7 corners. So when it comes to down Seminary to the hospital, instead of its current alignment, where it turns left and goes to Braddock Road and then takes King Street to the King Street Metro, the new proposal is that it will turn right, go down Howard, Jordan, and then take Duke Street into the King Street Metro. And the reason that Metro is proposing this is that they believe that this will provide a better connection to the King Street Metro. There's a lot of transit, potential transit riders down in Fox Chase area. And also, we're planning, we've got some new improvements on Duke Street that will help with buses, including some signal prioritization technology that will hopefully provide a faster ride. So that's part of the reason that they did that. And again, that takes over for part of the 25B along Howard Street and part of Jordan Street. Okay, so that in a nutshell is the major route changes for Central Alexandria. I've got them listed here, and I think I've covered most of these, so I won't read these off. Let's see, the only thing that I did mention all this. So yeah, so we've got all these changes listed here. You can see the existing routes that, existing routes they're replacing. The AT5, AT6 on King Street is now going to be replaced by line 31. One thing I don't think I mentioned is if you go to our website, the-bus.com/new network, there's a lot of information. There's some neighborhood specific information. So if you want to see your neighborhood and click on it and see what the impact is for that neighborhood, you can do that. There's also a really helpful table that shows if the existing dash routes and then kind of translates that to what the new dash network route would be. So if you look, if you ride the AT7 in this segment, it's going to be part of the line 32. So you can use that table as kind of a translation if you're not sure about which new route would be helpful for you. Okay, so that covers the service. I've got a couple more slides before we get to the Q&A. I wanted to include some updates for our fares. There's no proposed increases to fares, so I want to be clear about that. We are keeping the $2 base fare, $45 dash pass, which is the monthly unlimited pass. A couple improvements that we're making that we think will make fares a little more easier and simpler are one, our Smart Trip Dash Pass. If you go into, if you have a Smart Trip card, you can add your Dash Pass, the Smart Trip card. However, the current way it's set up now, it's tied to the calendar month. It's only good from the first of the month to the end of the month. And that can be kind of tricky depending on when you buy it. It's either good for the current month or for the following month, which can create confusion. So what we're proposing is to change it to a rolling 31-day pass, where once you buy it, it's good for 31 days after that. So if you buy it in the middle of the month, it's good right away, and it's good for the next 31 days. So hopefully that'll make it a little more convenient. We had a small upcharge that we're removing, so that's a positive thing for seniors and disabled users. And then we're also looking to follow WMATA's lead. They are considering an expansion of some of the passes that they offer. Currently, we only have one pass that's good on both Dash and WMATA. That's the 7-day regional pass. WMATA is looking to expand that to additional pass offerings that are good on both Dash, Metro Bus, and potentially Metro Rail as well. So, we're kind of following their lead on that a little bit, but we are supportive of that and hope that we will be able to expand our agreement with them. And we've still got our mobile ticketing app, Dash Bus app, which you can use to pay for your fare. And we also accept the Smart Trip app, which has just been released in the last few months. Okay, so just you see here a list of all the outreach activities that we've got going on. This is the second of 4 community-focused meetings. So if you're wanting to join in other meetings, you can see the dates listed there. I do want to highlight that we have our public hearing with the Board of Directors on April 14th. It'll be right at the start of the meeting, so please try to register beforehand and be on time if you're planning to attend and speak at that event. And all these videos are available on our Facebook, which is right here, facebook.com/dashbus. So if you miss a meeting and want to go back and see it, it's available. So you can see the other ways to provide feedback. I would highlight the email address is a really helpful way to kind of, you can write an email and we'll get that and be able to read it. And all the feedback that we get, as Whitney mentioned, is going to be shared with the board of directors, who will be making the final decision on how to proceed and if any changes need to be made in the coming months. So just make sure you get your feedback in before April 16th. That's the deadline. And I think that is the end of my presentation. So I will turn it back over to Whitney.
Thanks, Martin. Okay, we do have a few questions that have come in, and I encourage anyone attending to please send those in if you'd like to ask any questions of Martin. So we'll jump right in. The first question I have is Dash tracking bus ridership now, or will it do so in the future?
So thanks for the question. Yes, we are tracking ridership. We track ridership every day. And we get that data through our fare boxes, and some of our buses also have automated passenger counters, which are kind of sensors above the doors that count passengers. So we're able to count ridership. I'm not sure if they didn't really ask this, but you know, our ridership is currently just below 50% of what a regular ridership is looking like. We are obviously still recovering from the pandemic. You know, we were severely down last spring, but we've kind of been gradually coming back since then. Yeah, so we're at about almost 50% of our regular ridership at this point.
Thank you, Martin. Next question. Why is rush hour service on the 103 and 104 lines being reduced from 20 to 30-minute intervals through the start of 2023?
So another good question. Yes, so so I actually did not even include the 103 and 104. I should have. I have a slide for those later. Actually, let me see if I have it. Looks like I've got a little bit of a lag on my slides here. Oh, there we go. Okay, here we go. So So 103 and 104 are the routes that are replacing the AT3 and the AT4, which are peak-only routes that run from currently run from Old Town up to the Pentagon. So the proposal for FY22 is, and for the ATV, is that those routes would continue to operate along the same alignments with new names, the 103 and 104. However, they would not go into Old Town. They would just start at Braddock Road. So anyone who's using those routes currently to go into Old Town would need to make a transfer at Braddock Road to the Old Town Circulator, which will be running very frequently. So it should be a relatively easy transfer. So you can see the alignments here, and for the headway question. So you know, pre-COVID, these routes were both running every 20 minutes, and we were getting really high ridership on them. You know, often 500-600 riders per route per day on a typical weekday. Due to the pandemic has really hit these commuter routes the heaviest. The routes that are not commuter routes are down maybe 50%. But routes like these routes are down by 80 to 90, even 90+%. So we've started to see some ridership come back on them, but they're still really down. So we're continuing to monitor them. These routes are currently running every 60 minutes, the AT3 and the AT4, which is definitely lower than we would like to have them. So we are planning to bring them up to every 30 minutes as soon as we can, which is FY22. And we'll continue to monitor ridership and see when the next step will be when we're able to bring it up to every 20 minutes. Right now in our proposal, we have it as FY23, but certainly we would kind of keep an eye on ridership to determine if we need to adjust that. And I will kind of acknowledge that there is a bit of a chicken and egg situation where when you have routes like these only running every 60 minutes, they're not particularly useful. So, that's partly to blame for why the ridership is probably so low right now. So, we're hoping that when we bring it up to at least 30 minutes, that will become more useful. And I will note that if you do stand at Martha Custis and Gunston or along Braddock, you're getting both routes, and they are scheduled to be offset. So, when both routes are running every 30 minutes, that means buses are coming every 15 minutes through there. So that's a helpful trick that we do to improve service in those areas.
Thank you, Martin. The next question, what are the prospects for on-demand service for areas such as Northridge that are having midday, evening, and weekend service on the 8234 service eliminated?
Sure. So that's a really good question. So as part of the ATV, we had looked at a couple different things. We had kind of a policy discussion about ridership versus coverage in terms of how much we want to invest in coverage and how much we want to invest in ridership in terms of how we allocate our resources. And we did decide to move, the board directed us to move in a firm ridership direction where we want to try to focus on ridership as one of our key litmus and key decisions. The At34 Loop unfortunately is proposed to be discontinued. I'm sorry, I should have mentioned that one as well when I was talking about the 3 and the 4. But the At34 Loop, for those that aren't familiar, is the route that kind of operates like these two routes, 103 and 104, only run during the peaks. During other times of day and weekends, the At34 Loop runs a loop along these, basically through Park Fairfax, Northridge, down into Old Town. So it's kind of the off-peak version of the 3 and the 4. But the ridership is historically been very low on this route. It's one of the lowest from a ridership efficiency standpoint. So the decision was made to remove it or discontinue it as part of the ATV. So we had looked at some options in terms of other types of non-fixed route service, which includes demand response. We are not planning, we're not proposing at this point to implement those, but I think that's certainly something that we would consider in the future. The Alexandria Mobility Plan, I'm not sure if folks are familiar with that, but that's another project that's going on right now, and I think they're conducting their outreach as well. That's an update to the city's transportation master plan. And one of the things that they're looking at is areas where transit is not providing service, and how other methods like demand response could be used. So I think the AMP is going to be guiding a lot of the decisions on that, and that's something that we're participating in, and we're going to be following closely to see what recommendations come out of that.
Thank you, Martin. Actually, you mentioned peak periods a few times during your last response, and one of our attendees actually asked, could you specify how peak periods are defined? Do you have specific times when you consider to be peak, or is that still under analysis?
Sure, yeah, that's a helpful question to answer. Generally, peaks are, it varies a little bit from route to route, just because there's different needs in different parts of the city. But I think the safest definition is 6 to 9 in the morning on weekdays, and then about 3 to 6 in the evenings. Sometimes it goes like 6 to 10 or 3 to 7, especially for routes like the 3 and the 4 that have longer trips. So they're just kind of out there a little bit longer. But generally, I would say 6 to 9 and 3 to 6 are the kind of the core of the peak periods when you would expect to see those peak headwinds.
Thank you, Martin. Next question. Is Dash able to serve the Huntington Metro Station, which is outside the boundary of Alexandria City? Boarding Metro rail there is much more preferable to doing it at King Street because Huntington is the beginning of the line, so the trains are emptier.
So that's not something that we've looked at doing or discussed. There's some routes that provide service to the Huntington Metro Station from Alexandria. You've got the NH2 from King Street. You've got the Rex. And then you've also got the 10A, which comes straight from Old Town down to Huntington. So there are some routes, they're not Dash routes, but there are Metro bus routes that make that connection. So there is that option. Typically Dash stays within the city. Yeah, so those are the routes that I would recommend. But that's not something that came out of our ATV planning to have a route extend down down to Huntington because of those other Metro bus routes that I mentioned.
Thank you. Next question. Will Dash make any major modifications when Anova Alexandria Hospital moves to the Landmark Mall site?
Very good question. So we have, like I mentioned, designed this network with the future in mind, and all of us have known for a long time that Landmark is going to be a very very active, very dense hub. You know, it's always been talked about a redevelopment of some sort of another. So now that the plans are becoming clearer, you know, it's becoming more talked about. But yeah, we've planned for that to be a critical part of the West Alexandria and really regional transit network. So we've got a number of routes that are going to be going there. Let's see if I can actually bring it up. There's going to be you know, long term, there's going to be 2 bus rapid transit lines that are going to be going there, the West End Transit Way, and then also the Duke Street BRT, which is coming down, going to be discussed in the coming months. But you can see that it's really well positioned to serve a lot of different needs. It's even though there's nothing really going on at the mall right now, you know, we still have a lot of transfers that occur there just because of its location. So that will continue. We're also working with the city and developer to build a really nice transit center there. So we are expecting that instead of having to go to the back of the mall under the parking garage, we'll have a nice modern transit hub that's out much closer to Duke Street. So we'll be able to get the buses in and out, serve the new uses there, the kind of the town center there, but not slow down riders that are traveling through the area, and kind of get in and get out and keep going. So we're working attended a lot of meetings over the last months and really years on designing that. So we're really looking forward to having a really positive and improved transit experience and connections to Landmark in the future when it's redeveloped.
Thank you. Next question. Some jurisdictions are shifting to smaller buses due to the downturn in demand during the pandemic. How will Dash react to a significant drop in commuter demand after the pandemic?
That's an interesting question. I have heard a little bit about that. I guess capital and fleet decisions are usually kind of more longer term. The average order time between when you place an order for a bus and when it actually rolls into your garage and starts revenue service is usually 18 months to 2 years. So usually those are kind of long term. And then the lifespan of a bus is at least 12 years usually. So if you're trying to change your fleet composition, you can't really do that overnight. It takes a lot of time. So we are not planning to reduce our fleet size. Actually, we are going the opposite direction. We have our first orders of new articulated buses, which are the 60-foot buses, which are with the accordions in the middle. You may have seen some older versions of the articulated buses rolling around since the summer platform improvement project 2 years ago. But we're actually going to be buying some new articulated buses because we expect ridership to increase and are wanting to make sure that we have capacity, especially on key regional routes. As far as the commuter routes go, we do have a mix of vehicles. So we do have some 35-footers, slightly smaller than our 40-footers and 60-footers. So we were able to deploy those to routes that have lower ridership if needed. But I don't think we're planning to reduce fleet size too much, just because we hope ridership will go up first of all, and also because with the pandemic, having excess capacity, the ability to spread out a little bit more is certainly going to be seen as a positive thing. Even once vaccinations are kind of widespread, I think it'll still take some time for people to get used to being crammed on a bus. So we want to try and make sure we have capacity.
All right, next question. Dash has service from King Street Metro Station and from Potomac Yard to the Bradley Shopping Center. Was there any consideration to have more direct routes from Braddock Road Metro Station to the Bradley Shopping Center?
That's a good question. When we first did the the ATV, the kind of the long-term vision reimagining of the network, we looked at a lot of different options and different routings and tried to understand where the demands were. We actually were able to get some really comprehensive, it's called OD data, it's origin destination data. It's based on anonymized cell phone data, but it fully, fully within, protects privacy. It's completely anonymized, but we're able to see that data at an aggregate level, not individual level. And we are able to use that to understand where people are moving and where the demand is, and kind of compare that to our existing network and see where the gaps may be between areas, kind of connections that are being served well or not being served well. So based on that, we did not see, and kind of our knowledge, we did not see a strong connection from Braddock Road to Bradley, at least not directly. That's something that if you were making that connection, you would have a one-seat ride with a very frequent route with line 31, which, as I said, runs every 10 minutes peak, every 15 minutes midday and weekends. So you could ride all the way around if you wanted to, or probably more realistically, you probably want to get off the King Street Metro and just take the train. So there are connections there. One other thing I'll just mention is as kind of a wider note for this network. One of the really powerful things about having a widespread, frequent all-day network, all these red lines on the map, is that it really exponentially increases your ability to get around using transfers. So normally if you just have a routes crossing, you may have to wait 30, 45 minutes to make that transfer. But if you have two red lines crossing each other, both of those are running every 15 minutes all day, 7 days a week. So the most that you'd have to wait is probably 5 to 10 minutes before the next bus comes along for your transfer. So it makes transfers much less much more painless. It also allows you to kind of, it opens up a lot of more possibilities to get around the city very easily, not just on the one route, but using more than one route. And to that point, additionally, the transfers, we're making plans that transfers will not only be convenient in terms of the time, but also in terms of the waiting environment. So we're looking at key transfer locations that are being created by this network, where those frequent routes cross, and trying to make sure that we have amenities, shelters, real-time signage, things that make it a lot more convenient, a lot more pleasant to wait for the bus. So hopefully you're only waiting for 5 to 10 minutes, but hopefully it's also a pleasant wait, and it's protected from the elements, things like that. So that's a focus of ours as well for this new network, which relies more on transfers.
Thank you. Next question. Did Dash's research show a potential demand for a route with service 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, such as night owl service?
So that's a good question. We did not see a strong demand, at least not within our typical corridors for 24-hour service. I will say that with our new line 35 in the West End, we are expanding our hours pretty significantly. It's going to be running basically from almost 4 a.m. in the morning to like 1 a.m. at night, and possibly a little bit later, depending on where you are on the route. And that's a lot later than we're used to. We're having to make adjustments with our maintenance and operations team, having to shift schedules around so that they are able to cover late night and early mornings a little more than they are today. So we're getting closer to 24-hour, at least in the West End. But for the rest of the routes, we haven't quite gotten there. And also, a lot of our ridership is feeding into Metro Rail stations. And obviously Metro Rail is not getting close to 24 hours yet. So if they moved in that direction, maybe that's something that we would want to follow suit on.
And the last question that I have, Dash goes to 2 non-Alexandria locations, Shirlington and the Pentagon. Were there any other non-Alexandria locations considered, like Reagan Airport, Springfield Metro Station, etc.?
So yeah, that's a good question. We typically operate within Alexandria. There's some exceptions to that, as you've noted here. We have one route that goes to Shirlington, a couple routes that go up to actually 3 routes now that will go up to the Pentagon. with the 35 going up to the Pentagon now from the West End. So, you know, we typically leave that type of longer regional routes. Those are typically picked up by Metro Bus. Metro has a lot of routes that run kind of more regional. That's kind of just how the setup is structured in terms of our relationship with WMATA. You know, that doesn't rule that out. I think they are WMATA has they had a big bus transformation project that they have undertaken, or they just finished about a year or so ago. And one of the recommendations that came out of that was to do a regional study, kind of similar to what we did with the ATV, but for the whole metro region. So we're going to be kind of evaluating where the demand is for those regional routes. You know, if the current services are adequately meeting those needs, and potentially you know, changing some routes. Probably, you know, Alexandria is probably going to stay mostly the same because, you know, the metro was part of this ATV that we did, but for other parts around the region, there could be some changes in terms of which routes go to which regional hubs, and potentially Dash could be, you know, that could affect some of our routes. So, you know, we've got our neighbors in Fairfax and Arlington that we're working with, so we're always trying to provide a seamless connection along the boundaries. But to, I guess, to answer the original question, you know, we have talked about in the past about like Crystal City or you know, maybe some places in Arlington, but no, we have not proposed anything to that effect. Although I will, sorry, one addendum to that, our 2030 ATV plan does extend the line 31, the King Street route extends out to Skyline. So by 2030, we would hope to have even further out service on the King Street Metro, because there's a whole lot of population and commercial activity at Skyline that is, you know, it's a connection that we can improve, I think, in the future.
I actually had, thank you, Martin. I actually had one more question to come in. Have you considered offering low or no fare service to low-income individuals to increase ridership among those groups?
Yes, that's a great question. So I think, you know, we had last, or I guess the past year has been sort of an impromptu experiment in not having fares and what that could look like. As many of you probably know, Dash suspended fare collection March 20th of last year, and we just resumed it March 15th of this year. So almost a whole year without fares. So that was kind of an impromptu experiment. And we've actually also, you know, we're in the process of wrapping up a study of potentially going fare free, and then what the impacts would be of that, revenue impacts, logistical impacts, operating logistics, all that. We've got a consultant that's doing that. And then they're also looking at potential fare programs for free or reduced fares for low income individuals. And that study was funded by a MWCOG grant program. So that's kind of just a study at this point. You know, we're providing that information to the city, which would ultimately determine if they want to go in this direction of free or reduced fares. And that, you know, would be made by city leadership through their budget process. So there has been discussion about free fares or low income fares or reduced fares for low income individuals. So it's an active discussion, but we don't have anything concrete to report at this point. And you know, I'm not sure what the future will be, but it's certainly something that we're studying.
Thank you, Martin, and thank you everyone for your great questions. It looks like that will conclude the Q&A section of tonight's meeting. So we do have just a few more poll questions for you all before we close the meeting. So Caitlin, if you would please share the next poll question. Please provide your response to the following statement. For myself and my own personal transportation needs, the new Dash network will be better than or comparable to the current Dash bus network. The selections are strongly agree through strongly disagree. If you would please make your selections.
We're going to give it a few more seconds. A little less than half of attendees have voted.
Thank you very much. Let's pull the next one. For the city of Alexandria as a whole, the new Dash network will provide better or comparable overall bus service than the current Dash network. Please let us know if you strongly agree through strongly disagree.
Okay, most attendees have voted. We'll give you a few more seconds to finish up. If anyone else is about to vote.
Thank you, Caitlin. And let's move to the next question. Now, if you selected agree or strongly agree to either of the previous questions, please provide the primary reasons for your response. You can select more than one option here, so please take your time, read through the options, and make your selections. Also, the final option is other. If you select other, I encourage you to please put what that response would be in the Q&A section so that we can have that response as well.
Responses are still coming in. We'll give it a few more seconds. Okay, almost everyone's responded. We're going to end the poll now.
Thank you. And let's go ahead and put up the next question. This one is if you selected disagree or strongly disagree to either of the previous questions, please provide those primary reasons for those responses. Again, you can select more than one option, and there is an other option at the very bottom. If you would please include that in the Q&A if you select other.
Responses are still coming in. We'll give it another few seconds for anyone to finish up their response.
And if you would please share the next and final poll question for the evening. If you selected not sure, neutral, or need more information, please provide the primary reason or reasons for that response as well.
Answers are still coming in. Okay, we'll give it a few more seconds. If you're entering response, you can finish up.
Thank you, Caitlin. Martin, would you please put up the ways to provide feedback slide as we close out the evening? Thank you again for sharing your thoughts and taking the time to fill out our poll questions. All of your information, your comments, your feedback, and your questions are very helpful to us as we move through this process. If you have any additional feedback or questions, please email us, call us, reach out to us on social media, or visit us online at dashbus.com/new network. A recording of this meeting will also be available at that link as well. The video will also live on our Facebook page. I want to thank Martin for providing the information this evening, Caitlin for being our technical wizard, and our board members. If either of you would like to provide any closing thoughts, I'll give you a moment to do that.
Thank you, Whitney. Again, my thanks to the DASH staff for conducting the meeting this evening. It was very helpful in sharing the DASH initiative that we're moving towards. We had a very good turnout this evening for this session, so thank you all that joined, and we very much appreciate your feedback. So please do reach out to us with the sources that are on the screen now to let us know any additional comments you might have. But again, thank you for being part of the presentation this evening. Larry?
Yeah, thank you, Steve. I'll just echo your praise for the DASH staff here. And I would encourage the community, look at these links, make sure you're sharing this with your friends, your neighbors, your colleagues around the city. We are looking for your comments. So please help us. Thanks.
Thank you both. And again, a big thank you to all of our attendees this evening for your amazing feedback. I hope everyone has a good evening. Take care.